Most law firm owners are crushing it on paper. Big settlements, top line revenues, but behind the scenes, they're floating payroll with quick loans, sweating court fees, and kicking retirement plans down the road. In this episode, Frank Rekas is going to break down how to finally stop bleeding cash, build real wealth, and take control using what we're deeming the Rockefeller Method for law firms, designed specifically for law firm owners. Today's episode is sponsored by Intake EQ. If your law firm is spending thousands on ads, SEO, or referrals, but you can't tell what's actually working, you're not alone. Most law firms are leaking leads because their intake isn't dialed in. Intake EQ fixes that. We track every lead from click to sign case so you know which part of your marketing is most profitable. Our smart intake system helps your team convert more without hiring more. Don't waste another expensive click with a missed phone call. Turn more leads into signed cases with Intake EQ. Learn more at intake-eq.com. The link will be in the description below. So Frank, welcome to the Legal Lead Shark podcast. Why don't you kick us off with a quick 30-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you do, who you serve, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here. So I'm a financial planner. I was born and raised in Chicago, a huge sports fan, and Chicago is still a big part of me, and I go back often to visit. I now live in Boca Raton, Florida, and I've been a financial planner for about 30 years. And recently, probably the last couple of years, I've worked specifically with law firms and law firm owners. And primarily, I like to say that we'll cover three different areas: helping them minimize taxes. We'll do the risk management, which is going to involve protecting their life, their income, and their assets with various insurance products, and then helping them grow their wealth. The ultimate goal is really to help them reach financial freedom so that they can live their life with abundance and dignity. Thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this since we last talked, so I'm looking forward to get into it.
Yeah, I am too. So I actually met Frank on LinkedIn. If you're not following Frank on LinkedIn, you definitely should be. He's a great networker in general when he knows the who's who. But Frank and I actually had a really interesting conversation. Back in another life, I like to say, in Texas, I was a financial planner. I had my Series 6 and 63 and life insurance licenses. And I study financial planning even today, even though it was years ago that I actually worked in financial planning. But I still read books all the time on building wealth and financial planning. I knew I was going to hit it off with Frank. Funny enough, we actually got onto the topic of the Rockefeller Method, and that's what today's podcast is going to revolve around. But before we get there, Frank, I want to ask you one of the biggest questions, I think one of the most beneficial questions for anyone watching this podcast, which are all law firm owners that are looking to scale. What is the biggest financial blind spots that you see law firm owners having?
That's a great question. And as you would probably expect, as well as anybody who's listening, it's more than one. I think the first one really is overpaying in taxes. And that can come as a result of a number of different situations. Your CPA or your tax planning advisor is not proactive, so you just end up overpaying because you're just not sure of some of the different tools and resources that are available to you. The second thing, and probably one of the biggest ones, is not having a financial plan. And I've seen a lot of attorneys and even business owners where things are not aligned, so then you don't really have a direction. You're not really sure where you're going and where things are headed. The other thing is too much cash that's being held on the side because of a potential emergency, which I agree you have to have some cash on the side, but I've seen some significant numbers that make me wonder, like, why do you have so much cash sitting in a bank account, in a checking account for that what if moment? You really need to be able to put some of that money to work for you. And we can talk about a situation later on that, I've recently helped somebody with. Mixing your business and your personal finances, that's a real no-no. Money comes in, you want to spend it on personal items, you want to spend it on business items, and all of a sudden you get to the end of your year and you wonder, where's all my money? What happened, right? Ignoring retirement planning is another big one. A lot of law firm owners will have a retirement plan, but it may not be the right plan. And when I say the right plan, you're not able to take advantage of the opportunities that you have to put as much money away as possible. There are some things that you can do beyond a 401k and a profit sharing plan if you're in the right income situation. The other thing I've heard from attorneys is, I pay my people well enough, I don't want to do a retirement plan. Well, that's a big blind spot because you're running the risk risk that you're going to lose a good attorney, paralegal, staff person to another firm who does offer a retirement plan. So it is something that you need to consider. Exit strategy is another one. What is going to happen when you no longer want to be involved with your firm? Whether you have a partner or whether you're a sole practitioner or you're a sole owner of a firm, I think having that in writing before something happens just takes a lot of pressure off the table. And the last thing, and most people don't talk about this, but it's being underinsured for life insurance, for disability insurance, for long-term care insurance. I've been doing this a really long time, and I continue to run into people who are younger than me who have ailments that are either preventing them from getting coverage or making it a real struggle for us to get them coverage.
Yeah. When I used to do financial planning, there was two things I would tell people. One, you can't hit a target you can't see. And if you don't have a financial planner who has sat down with you and really mapped out what it looks like, because it's different for every single one of us, that's like blindfolding someone, giving them a dart, spinning them in a circle and saying, okay, wherever your dart lands is where you end up. And who wants that, right? You want to know where you're going. Don't put an address in your GPS and start driving. Who knows where you're going to end up? You'll end up somewhere, but it might not be where you want it to be. And then with life insurance, I have a really sad story about this one, and it's a personal story, and I'll try not to get emotional because it really hit me hard. I used to tell my clients, one thing that we all have in common is if you were born, you will die eventually. Hopefully, we want that to be as long away as possible, but it's inevitable and it's guaranteed for all of us. I used to help people with planning, and you want to help the people you love the most, which are your family, right? So I was doing a financial plan with my cousin who, and at this time, he's in his early 20s. He had a baby on the way, just got married. Long story short, he kept putting off getting life insurance in place until he stopped smoking because it was going to be really expensive. He kept putting me off. About 6 months after we spoke, he was at a rodeo. He's cowboy. I'm from West Texas, small farm and ranch town in West Texas. And he had stopped riding Broncos, which is what he loved because his baby's on the way. So he was being responsible. He was driving one of his friends because his friend couldn't see at night. So he's just spectating. He's not even in the rodeo this time. He's sitting on the side. Someone had made a mistake and opened two of the chutes at once. Again, long story short, but the cattle were coming in with the Broncos at the same time. The Broncos freaked out. There was a young boy in there. I think he was 19 and he was going to ride the Broncos. He was in the pen and he was about to get killed. My cousin jumps in the pen to save him, and he actually got kicked in the head and died that day. 1 month away from his son being born, and there was no life insurance in place, and it devastated me. Of course, I felt a lot of guilt on that, thinking I should have pushed harder. You don't ever think this is going to happen to you, but things happen. And interestingly enough, the Rockefeller Method that we're going to discuss is a very creative way to solve two problems, and one of those is life insurance. We're going to get into that a little bit more, Frank, but I agree with you 100%. One, if you don't know where you're going to end up somewhere, and most likely it's not going to be where you want. And two, if you're not planning for the inevitable, then you essentially are just leaving all the people that you love, including the people that work for you, leaving them out there to figure it out and pick up the pieces. It's a selfish thing, in my opinion. And after going through that and seeing that tragedy myself, I really urge you guys, have a plan because things will happen. Frank, that kind of leads me into what you do more. Now, you said you work exclusively really with law firms and you cover financial planning. The cool thing is my husband, who just came on board at Legal Lead Sharks, brought over his payroll, HR, and payments processing. So again, there was a three-way connection here because he also meets with law firm owners that are wasting hours, probably 20 hours a month, processing payroll, which is a $10 an hour task. And unless you were trained to be a payroll expert in law school, which no one was, you're probably not doing it very well. Same thing with wealth management. If you weren't trained and this isn't all you do, you're probably not doing it to the fullest of capability. So tell me a little bit about how you got into really niching down on law firm owners.
It's a very organic story. I wish it was a little more dramatic than the way I'm going to tell it. But years ago, I was given what we call in our industry an orphan. And an orphan is a policy or contract holder or account holder when you're working at a firm and their advisor has left. I was given an account for a family law attorney, and I called her up. She had a few questions and wanted me to come up and see her. So I did. And I tell this the same way. She was a little rough around the edges, and so was I. I wasn't going to be stepped on. It wasn't that bad. She had a lot of questions. We came to, I guess, a subtle agreement. We started to get along very well. I did what she needed to have done, was able to help her. She referred me to an attorney. That attorney referred me to an attorney. One of my really good friends who I was working working alongside with at the time at this firm that I was at, got wind of, hey, I understand that you've done some business with a couple of attorneys. I have one. Would you work the case with me and help me out? We did that one. We did another one. We did another one after that. And it just kind of started to happen. So fast forward to about 2.5 years ago, I was also in management briefly for a little while, and I got out of management. It just wasn't for me. And I really enjoyed being an advisor and working with my clients. And I took a look at my client base, and I wanted to look for some commonalities. Where's everybody from? Where are they coming from? What do they do? More than 60% of my clients were attorneys. So I said, okay, if I'm going to quote unquote develop a niche, I'm going to work with law firm owners. And it was just that organic. Some of my best friends and clients are attorneys, and you start hanging around with them, you meet other people that they know, and well, who do most attorneys know? They know other attorneys. And I'm in networking groups, I'm in a local bar association, I've been to a local conference earlier this year. So it's really just getting out there and being among them. I also hold happy hours or coffee meetups periodically throughout the year. And it's just, putting myself out there to meet with them and see if I can help them. And if I can't help them, maybe they know somebody that I can help.
Yeah, same way. I've been in digital marketing since 2016. Before that, I was in sales, which I think makes me a really good marketer because you have to know the entire ecosystem. But the same thing happened to me several years ago. I worked with an attorney. I started really understanding the niche. I started seeing the pain points. And also, I love working with attorneys. I know we're named Legal Lead Sharks. It is a shark eat shark world out there. But what I love about the attorney group is the networking connections are so strong, and you do a good job for one, and you're constantly getting new referrals because they're just a really tight knit group, which I love. Oh, I want to know a little bit. Let's go back to that story you had. You said that you had a story that you could share with us if it was applicable. I want to give a real life look at some blind spots that attorneys are having and how you went in and saw, especially that big cash account, because here's what I found from running Google Ads, and finance is very much like sales or marketing. We have data feedback loop. It's if you know your numbers, it's like a big scoreboard. You can see what's winning, what's losing, where you're an MVP and where you need to hire one because you're not, and you can see all of this information. And I had noticed two things happening when I run Google Ads. Let's say personal injury law firms, for example, that's our bread and butter. When I run Google Ads for them, they have a really long cash cycle. And before I take on a new client, I don't care if they've been running ads for 10 years. I need them to understand what game we're playing, because if you're a chess master and then you go play Monopoly with somebody who's a Monopoly master, let's say. I know a lot of people love the game, but I don't know what you call like the experts. But anyways, just because you're a chess master and really smart doesn't mean you understand how to win at Monopoly, right? Because there is a strategy that goes into that, or vice versa. What I found a lot of times, let's say you get the click, you get the case signed, and then it's a death case, for example. We got 2 death cases for a client within 6 months. That, first of all, it's sad to say that's amazing because it really sucks, but those people need help. So it's amazing that we got them connected to a lawyer to make sure that if it was wrongful, that there's compensation for them. They're taken care of. They have someone in their corner fighting for them. But I've seen those cases take 6 months to 3 years to close out. And you've got an HR, you've got office expenses, and you have court fees and all this other stuff, which is really where we got deep into conversation on the Rockefeller Method, because I know a lot of lawyers are, for lack of a better term, paper rich and cash poor. When that settlement comes through, it could be $30 million, but until then, you still have to float yourself to get there. And so a lot of attorneys find themselves in this never-ending cat and mouse game where they're trying to float themselves. And that's probably the fear of that, or that happening to them in the past, is probably why too many of them are holding too much cash in account, or some of them have no cash and they're getting all these payday loans and it's eating them away in interest. So that'll segue us perfectly into your story and how we can help them in using what we're going to call the Rockefeller Method. This is something that's been used forever, but the Rockefellers actually mastered this, and we're going to get into that in a minute. Tell us a little bit about the story of the client you had that had way too much money setting in the account, probably because of fear, when they could have been making a great return on that and still had access to just enough to get by, if you will.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I might have a second story I'd like to add as well, just because I think it's like the staple of kind of what really got me entrenched in working with law firm owners. But the first one is I was given a referral from a CPA to a small firm that wanted to do a defined benefit plan. And a defined benefit plan is a retirement plan that is above and beyond a 401k and profit sharing plan. It's really meant for a business or a law firm owner that's making very very good money has maxed out on all their retirement planning options, and you can put away up to 6 figures and save yourself some significant taxes when you do that. And that's one area that they may not be aware of. But as we're going through our process, we have a pretty detailed, what I'll call fact-finding process. So that we were able to uncover that this person had 7 figures sitting in a checking account. Like,
Wow.
why is there so much of that in checking? Well, yeah, we know we need to do something about it. We know we need to make some adjustments, but we just like having it sit there. So what if we could put it into something that's still 100% liquid, but earns some better interest than what you're getting in a checking account and makes that money work harder for you? And knowing full well that if you do have to tap into it, you have complete access to it. And they said, boy, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know why we haven't done that before. So we took a chunk of that money, we invested it. I would say 75 to 80% of it is safe, right? Whether it's money market account, treasuries, whatever. And we took a small portion and invested that into a moderate type of portfolio in the market so that we could get some growth. And we just monitor this on a monthly basis with the client, or more or less depending on the situation. And they just felt a lot better. So good that maybe after the first 60 days, they're like, wow, we really like what's been happening in the account. So you don't have to have so much in cash and feel afraid to make it work for you, because that's the biggest thing. The other story, and this involves disability insurance, and hope I'm not getting too far away from what we really want to talk about, but came across law firm partners. We met them at a bar association event a few years ago, and somehow we were able to see each other in the area and saw them at a lunch once. We stopped by their office, grabbed a coffee for a little while, but then had an actual meeting. They were looking for disability insurance. 2 of the partners got coverage. The third partner couldn't get coverage. It was what we'll call postponed because there were some medical issues. And he was a little ticked off that his partners went ahead and moved forward on their coverage, but that he couldn't get coverage for himself. So did some fact finding. They had about 10 employees, found out some of the details about the person's medical situation. And then I said, okay, give me about a week or 10 days. Let's set up another appointment. I'm going to come back and I think we can solve this for you. I remember getting in the elevator, going down, my business partner's with me, and I got this grin on my face. And she's like, why are you smiling? I said, I can fix this. She goes, how? I said, let's get to the car first because, I don't want to be surprised by somebody popping in the elevator on the way down. So essentially what we did is we put in a group disability plan for all the employees. That is guarantee issue. There's no medical questions. The firm pays for that. That was part one. But with a group disability plan, there are some limitations, not only to the contract, but also to benefits and a few other things, much longer to get into, won't do that. And then we layered on top of that individual policies that the firm paid for, also guarantee issue. So now we were able to cover from A to Z, not only the partners, but all the employees, and everybody was extremely happy. And the one partner, who were very, very good friends, he says to me, well, how come the other advisor didn't bring this up? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But I'm glad that I did. I'm glad we solved the problem. So it's having the knowledge, it's having the experience, I think, which is something that, I can bring to the table in a lot of these different situations that come up.
Yeah. And you had said you've been in the industry for 30 years and we've already spoken, so I know this, but the difference between you and a lot of other advisors is that you have not only wealth management experience, but life insurance, health insurance. So you have a broader picture than someone that's just management. So the reason they didn't bring it up is most likely because they didn't know what they didn't know. And that's why connecting with the right people is so important. And that's why I wanted to have you on. I don't promote or refer out people that I don't believe are experts the best. I want people to connect with somebody that really knows how to do their job well. I am the biggest advocate of reading books. I read a book a month, usually maybe even 2. And you will hear it in every single book that you ever read, whether it's 10X is easier than 2X or Who Not How, Buy Your Time Back, which is what I'm reading now, E-Myth Revisited. All these books are saying the same thing, which is you are only an expert at about 20% of what it takes to run a business. So instead of trying to DIY or bootstrap the 80%, I get people all the time. On my last video, I actually just posted it this morning, and I got a question, how do I set up back-end conversion tracking? I'm like, I can't answer that in a comment. I don't even know if I could answer that for you on a 1-hour call, because unless you're a Google Ads expert, setting up conversion tracking properly, one, is hard. First of all, I know tenured Google Ads management people that aren't setting it up right. But 2, there's a next step. There's always a next step. There's more, right? So if you've got the conversion tracking
Yeah.
set up properly, do you know what's happening after that? How many cases were slip and fall? How many were dog bite? How many were workers' comp? What's the average settlement? There's so many other things you have to know that it's completely impossible. You're bottlenecking yourself by trying to figure out things
Mhm.
that someone else has spent 30 years, like you, figuring out already.
Mhm.
And you had that answer, but really you had that answer for him already. You were just giving yourself some cushion to go get it implemented, but you already knew how
Yeah.
to fix the problem. And
Yeah.
who knows how long they've had this problem, and their previous advisor didn't know how to solve it. So that's a really good point that you constantly, so they had an advisor, but it wasn't the right fit, or it wasn't the
Mhm.
one with the experience they needed. Just like we need to do time audits on ourselves as business owners, we need to do audits every couple years of who are we working with? What marketing agency? Are they the best fit for us? What wealth management
Mhm.
advisor? It's free most of the time to get a second look.
Yeah.
Is your payroll company the best? My husband can tell you in 10 minutes, right? You give him some information, he
Mhm.
can tell you. Same thing with wealth management. You have a very detailed process of intake, and you can tell them
Mhm.
pretty quickly, yeah, thumbs up, like whoever you're with is great. Or,
Mhm.
okay, here's all the holes in your bucket. So you just keep putting water in. Here's where
Mhm.
all of it's flooding out and not serving you. That's the benefit of getting experts in your field to offload that 80% to other people.
And that's a great way to say about the kind of work that we do specifically. The last thing I'm going to do is disrupt good work from another advisor. That's not what I'm about. And I had a conversation last week with a client that's coming on board, and we reviewed something of his. And I said, look, sit where you're at. You're in good shape. It doesn't make any sense for me to make some changes in this particular area. I know probably 50 other advisors would tell you differently, but that's because they're coming at it from they want to make a little money on it. You and I are going to work in this other area, and I'm perfectly fine with you keeping this as is because you're not going to benefit by making a change. The only person that's going to benefit is me. And I think that, kind of goes a long way for people because I would want the same treatment if I was on the other side of that. So having the experience is great, but like you said, it doesn't cost anything to have a second look. And if you're okay, I'm the first one to tell you that you're okay. But if I find something that needs attention, then, the decision ultimately is yours. But I hope you like me enough where you would move forward with me and my process. We've got a strong team. My business partner and one of our other partners, they're both CFPs, and we're always looking to learn and looking to grow. So we don't know everything, but we're always looking to find out. And speaking of Buy Back Your Time, I just finished that about 2 weeks ago. So you're going to like that book a lot. And I did E-Myth earlier this year too. So that's kind of weird that we're
Awesome.
reading the same books.
Yeah. Yeah. I read 10X is easier than 2X every January since I've discovered that. The game of business, which law firm owners that aren't running your firm like a business because you think, well, law firms are different. Everybody thinks their business is different. Everybody thinks
Yeah.
I'm unique. This isn't going to work in my sector because it's different. But guys, if you're not running it like a business, then you're a solo practitioner and that's where you're going to stay. And you can scale a little bit and you're going to hit that wall and you're never going to go higher. So every time we up level my agency, I need to up level myself. I know the person that got me where I was is not the person that's going to take me to the next level. And so every year I reread books all the time like that. E-Myth is
Yeah.
another one that I've read twice. I think I'm third time will be this year, but I'm constantly auditing myself and how I just know I can't be the person I was in the last season and then get to a new place. If I could have done that, then I would already be there.
Yeah.
Rereading these books are so valuable because I'm a different person reading from a different perspective. Okay,
Exactly.
speaking of reading books, and I bring this one up a lot, my husband's like, you need to read some more law firm books. This is just the most recent that I've read. So if you've watched my previous interviews, you're going to hear this a million times, but I finished the book Fireproof several months ago by Mike Morris. And
Okay.
this is what gave me the idea of the Rockefeller method. And then automagically, you and I met, which was like
Mhm.
synchrony, right? I finished the book and I'm like, wait, I know somebody now that can do it, right?
Yeah.
So here's where the Rockefeller method comes in for you guys. Quick backstory on the Rockefeller method. The Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts at their time were the two richest families in America. And the Rockefellers are still one of the richest families in America. The Vanderbilts actually by the third generation had lost all of their wealth. They have a really swanky university named after them, and that's about all they have left of their family legacy. A funny story is Anderson Cooper. A lot of people don't know he's a Vanderbilt. And he didn't even get his way into being a news anchor off the back of being a Vanderbilt. He had to sneak in, and it was deceptive, which is a funny story in my opinion, but he had some grit. But it's just crazy to me to think that one family, they exponentially grew their wealth over the generations using the method we're about to explain to you. And the other family within the third generation was completely broke. And the way this correlates to each other is I was reading the book Fireproof, and Mike Morris said when he was stuck in that messy middle, he didn't really have the team and the systems in place yet to scale. He was making great money, but he found himself in that paper rich, cash poor cycle over and over again, where he was like, I don't understand. We're closing millions in settlements, and we're always playing this cat and mouse game, trying to float ourselves to the next settlement. So essentially, he had mentioned is they were having to take these, for lack of a better term, payday loans to float themselves. And then they were paying back really high interest rates in order to cover court costs and operating expenses until he got a COO in place that could plug these gaps for him. But there is a better way than borrowing from these cash payday loans. And we're going to coin it the Rockefeller Method. This is what the Rockefellers used. There's a great book by Garrett Gunderson, Feeding the Golden Cows, and he has the Rockefeller Method book. So really great books. But Frank knows exactly what I'm talking about. So Frank, let's get into that a little bit. What is what we're calling the Rockefeller Method for law firms, and how can they use it to not only cover themselves with insurance, but become their own family bank and borrow that money from themselves and then pay themselves back the interest, so it's a win-win both ways?
So the Rockefeller Method is, I guess, the best way to say it, and I'm going to try and keep this as simple as we can. It's really for generational wealth planning. I mean, the first thing that I'm going to say is how much better off would we all have been if our parents would have left us something, or our grandparents would have left us something upon them passing. I know it happens in certain families. It did not happen in mine. Unfortunately, I did not come from a huge inheritance. Matter of fact, part of my why is because I watched both my parents struggle, both during their working years and then my mom during her retirement. My father never got to really achieve retirement because he passed away early. But it's a structure that you can have where your money actually has a purpose for you. And the purpose for you is really to help you build wealth for yourself, because you're using it in a tax efficient product, and you're also building wealth for your legacy, for leaving it for the future, for your children, maybe for your grandchildren. And it's designing a plan that fits you, your family, maybe even your business, so that you have this, I'll call it private reserve, for lack of a better word. Be your own bank. I'm not really thrilled about that because that gets a lot of bad press, so I don't really want to talk about it in that term. But if you're building a private reserve and you're utilizing the chassis of a life insurance policy, it's a cash value life insurance policy. So there's money in there that's growing. It's growing on a tax deferred basis. You need money. This could be a place where you come and get that money from. There's no bank application for a loan. You don't have to take a second mortgage out on your property. You don't have to have a credit check and be approved. You're essentially borrowing your money. And ultimately, you will put it back if that's the right way that we're going to do this. But you have access to capital that is significantly easier to get than it is from any of these other places. And I've had people put their children through college. I've had people who unfortunately fell behind in paying taxes and needed money right away to pay for taxes. I've also had people, buy their second home, put a down payment on an upgrade home, whatever it is, medical emergencies. Things happen to people, and you need to be diversified and have a pool of money or some capital that you can get to relatively easy. The other thing is that if you do this right, and let's say you don't ever need to tap into it, then you get to your retirement. Well, these dollars in your private reserve fund or private reserve account can be used to help supplement your retirement and will create tax-free cash flow, that you have other investments or other vehicles that are not going to be tax-free. The biggest beauty of it is that unless you're in the estate planning penalty situation where you're between you and your spouse, you're close to $30 million, the death benefit of a life insurance policy is estate tax free. Now, every situation is going to be different. There are situations where require a little bit more planning, and I don't want to use this podcast, right now to get into that, but every situation is looked at on I want to say, separate basis. But the tool of using life insurance can have some significant advantages. Unfortunately, it's a conversation that some people don't want to have because they hear the word life insurance and they want to run. I mean, if I want to break up a party, I just tell people I sell life insurance and I don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And once in a while, I will do that if I'm on an airplane and I just don't feel like talking. I say I sell life insurance and I'm good to go for the next 3 hours. So you're creating this private reserve pool of money that you have access to use for whatever it is you need. And if I'm your advisor, I'm not going to handcuff you from getting it. I might want to make sure that this is the right place to get it from and let you know what all the consequences are. But it's a great way to have this money readily available for you if you need it, when you need it, but especially at retirement.
Absolutely. So here's what's so special about how this works. Okay. If you guys are on the Dave Ramsey boat, you're like, oh no, whole life is bad, term is good. And I will say he is speaking to the average middle class American. So in that case, yes, they should follow that advice. We're speaking to business owners and higher net worth individuals. And we're not telling you whole life is better than term life. What we're telling you is whole life is a vehicle to be a sort of cash reserve for you because you are a higher net worth individual and you do own a business where you may need to liquidate some of that cash instead of borrowing it at astronomical rates at these quick payday loans, if you will. You borrow it from yourself. And as a side bonus, your family's going to be taken care of with anything that you didn't touch in those reserves. So it's a win-win. And that's exactly it. Read the book. You can listen to it on audiobook, read Garrett Gunderson's book, The Rockefeller Method. It literally is breaking down how every single generation in the Rockefellers use this system and they keep getting compound wealth on top of each other and borrowing that money to build business assets. And then they're putting life insurance on every single Rockefeller that's born. And those people build that. They have a mindset of money and business and wealth. And they're using these policies to contribute millions back into the bank account, the Rockefeller family bank, if you will. And then what they do take out is asset generating revenue because they're building on their business, which is exactly what we're encouraging or like opening the mindset up for here.
And if I could add, Kaylee, I don't think most people realize how Disney World was starting. Do you know?
No.
Well, Walt Disney had a whole life insurance policy and he borrowed money out of his whole life insurance policy to start Disney. So I don't think that was such a bad deal, right? I think that turned out a-okay for him. And there's been other people who have done that, but that's like the classic story. But also, like you mentioned, it's not meant for everybody. Where it fits really well is the high earner. They've maxed out their retirement plan, meaning their 401k and profit sharing. Maybe they even have a cash balance or defined benefit plan. So they've done all that. They still have more money that they want to put away that doesn't necessarily have to always be readily liquid, right? Maybe it's for an intermediate goal. Maybe it's ultimately for a long-term goal. So this is another vehicle that helps you diversify yourself and take advantage of the tax advantage growth, right? Because the money is growing on a tax deferred basis, but also giving you, the ability to tap into that money and borrow it and use it for whatever it is that you need it for. So it does have some very distinct advantages, and it doesn't have to be expensive. There are ways to design your contract where we can minimize the death benefit, because you have to have some death benefit there because it is life insurance in order to get the other advantages. But we can really fund it in a situation where the life insurance is just part of the situation. These are life insurance contracts first and foremost. I want to make sure that we all understand that, but it is a great tool for the right person who's exhausted all these other opportunities, but still wants to diversify themselves and create this quote unquote private reserve.
Yeah. I see a lot of businesses that when we do a marketing audit on their budget, what are you marketing on? A lot of what they're doing, honestly, is branding or pattern interrupt marketing, like billboards or whatever, fill in the blank, sports stadiums, which has its benefit sometime to stay top of mind. But again, if I'm in a car accident, it's a pretty low chance that it's going to be like, there's a billboard of a personal injury attorney. So,
Right.
but what I hear from a lot of them is they're spending that amount of money in marketing because they need tax benefits. They need a way to shelter some of that from getting taxed on an astronomical amount of money that they made that last year. So
Mm-hmm.
when you partner up with the right marketing partner that knows strategy, when you partner up with the right wealth management partner that knows tax strategy, this is how you complete your ecosystem of wealth. You have all these people that know what to do with that, and they know how to properly put those things to work for you, and not just like buying billboards for the sake of spending money because you're trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
balance the tax payment at the end of the year, basically.
Right. And, a lot of people will make the mistake of putting all of their investable dollars into tax deferred plans. So 401k, all the other retirement plans that I mentioned. The issue with that is that all of that money is going to be taxable at retirement. And let's keep it simple. You got $1 million, or you say you have $1 million. You really don't have $1 million, because if you passed away and that gets passed on to your heirs, it's probably more like $650 or $700,000 because it's taxable. Well, using the Rockefeller method, you have this additional resource of dollars that is going to come into your family or your heirs on a tax-free basis. So it's all about diversifying yourself properly and correctly. The biggest thing that I see out there is that these contracts or policies are set up incorrectly. So it makes sense to make sure that you're working with someone that knows the right ways to set them up. One of the advantages I think that I have is that I'm an independent financial planner. I'm not tied to any proprietary product. I don't have to provide you with company X or company Z. I'm going to put you with the company that's the best fit for you. Might not be the best fit for me or the person next to you, but it's the best fit for you. And that's really how your planning should be handled in almost every aspect, but especially when it comes to using this tool.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, Frank, I think we covered a lot of what I had the intention for, which was introducing you, letting people know what you do, and then also introducing them to a really valuable strategy when you are scaling. And a lot of the people watching this, they're in that messy middle. They're wanting to scale their law firm to the next Mike Morris. They're wanting to scale to the top of their industry, whether it's criminal law, personal injury law, immigration law, family law. And in order to do that properly, you have to have the right systems in place to get you there. So I wanted to introduce you to everyone so they knew a valuable resource. So how can they reach out to you, Frank, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to learn about what you can do for them? You have a really extensive, talk about that for a second. You have a really extensive report that you give as part of your consultation. What would they get when meeting with you?
So the best ways to contact me or reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every day. So if you direct message me or stick a comment in a post, I will get back to you. You can call me. I'm going to give out my number, 954-253-5508. You can email me, frank@palmwealthpartners.com. Very simple way. One of the tools that we use as part of our process is called Asset Map. And the great thing about Asset Map is that, number one, you can see everything that you own, that you owe, and that you have all on one page. Then we back it up by what's called target maps. And the target maps cover 6 different life events. And the target map will tell you you're on track, you're behind, or you're just where you need to be as long as we keep doing this. That's our planning process, and that's how we work best with the clients that we work with. And we can do that as part of our financial planning process and not touch anything else that you have. Keep all that information and those products in place. But this is really the tool that I think gives you your roadmap to your future.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the analogy of the putting in the GPS. If you're even like decimals off of the destination, you'll wind up in the wrong place. I remember reading that in 10X is easier than 2X. He said a group from New Zealand was going to view this Antarctic location, and they had the destination wrong by 5 degrees. And it ended up killing everyone on the plane because they ended up in the wrong spot. They couldn't refuel, they couldn't land, and they ended up crashing. So that's what this wealth management allows you to do. It allows you to see where you are, where you want to be, and to connect it to the right destination and not be 5 decimals off and wind up in the middle of nowhere with no refueling station. I'm going to leave all of Frank's information in the description below as well. Again, go connect with him on LinkedIn and go watch more videos on my channel if you want to continue to grow, to identify all of the possible holes in the bucket of your marketing systems and of your legal plan and how to scale to the top. Go check out those videos next, and we'll see you guys in the next one.